Career Track presents Volume 2 of Confident Public Speaking with Dr. Roko Paskov. In Volume 2, you'll learn how to use your voice and body to reinforce your message, as well as how to stage your speech. Now, Volume 2, Part 1 of Confident Public Speaking.
We're going to talk about your body, we're going to talk about what you do with it, and we're going to talk about your voice, and we're going to talk about some items of, I call them pizzazz. It's amazing. Everywhere you look in our society, they've taken the individual and the people out of it. 1983 Time Magazine Man of the Year, who was it? Anyone tell me? The computer. Who was number 2? E.T., extraterrestrial, beating out Menachem Begin. Now, I think that's a little bit unusual, but we've gone even farther than that. The Milwaukee Sentinel, February 25th, 1980, talked about the telephone company. Do you have the Reach Out and Touch Someone campaign here? Let me tell you how it started. The phone company decided they were going to get the human element back into the phone conversation, because you know that you don't have the human body, so you only have the voice. And so they commissioned a company to design a robot arm. You'd have a joystick on all phones, and on the other end of the phone would be a human arm. And so what you could do if you talk to someone is you could give all the warm, touchy human feelies and get that part back in the phone conversation. I talked to this woman, and I'm her boss, let's assume for a second, and I want to tell her she's done a nice job. I worked my joystick, and on her end, my voice is saying, you've done a nice job, and the old mechanical arm is going, there's this warm, touchy feely, right? I thought, how bizarre. Couldn't possibly happen. That was in February. Let me read you Milwaukee Sentinel, November 28, 1980, Gainesville, Florida, Associated Press release. An experimental robot shaped like a human arm went haywire and attacked itself, dislocating its shoulder, said the University of Florida student who was operating the robot at the time. So we still have the Reach Out and Touch Someone campaign, but we don't have the mechanical arm. Unless you think that this is a little bit bizarre and we've gone pretty far, let me read you from the Chicago Sun-Times an ad. Now, this ad comes from the classified section of the current New York Review of Books. It says, those select people whose importance prohibits them from vacationing as they choose may want to hire a surrogate vacationer. I will take your vacation for you. Following instructions of your devising as detailed or as flexible as you want to make them, I'll stay in the hotels you prefer, eat in the restaurants you select, order the dishes in which you delight, take your photographs, gather your perceptions, have your adventures, and on my return present you with a detailed written report bound in leather, rates on request. I'm happy to tell you this section, no one else can substitute. You've got to really do it. It's a lot of fun, and it involves getting you into the speech. No research, you. First of all, the voice. Remember, it's at 38%. We know a lot about the voice. We know, for example, from research, that if your voice is not relaxed, it tightens up and raises. Let me give you an example. I have a relaxed voice. Let me artificially tighten mine. You'll notice I haven't raised my voice artificially. This happens with a tightened vocal cord. Notice the strain. It seems higher, and it seems on edge. Now, we know from studies in lying, because they've done a lot of research in psychology and lying, that one of the first signs that they call leakage of lying is a voice that's not relaxed. It's the number one thing they look for. So automatically, people are probably going to suspect you. At the very least, they're going to think you lack confidence, that you may not know the subject, and you possibly may be lying. We're not going to say that's going to be determined for sure. But we do know that with a relaxed voice, you're going to come across a lot better. So first of all, I'm interested in relaxing the voice, because most times you get set to prepare, your body gets tight, the top part of it, your voice tightens, your voice goes up, and you have the strain built in. I want to link this to a second idea. Which kind of voice, which pitch of voice is most persuasive? Higher or lower? And there's no question, the research is very consistent. That, as a matter of fact, a low voice has been shown to be more credible. The people have been thought to be much more competent in the topic and much more confident. So we're talking about credibility, competence, confidence. Now the big question is, could many of us lower our voices? As a matter of fact, many males here could afford to lower their voice some, and women especially, your voices are higher. Otis Elevator has a brand new voice in their elevator, and it's a low male voice. Perhaps a sexist comment in our society. But it was a low women's voice that was also considered. So the big question is, how do we get your voice relaxed, and how do we lower it? And I want to have these two together. I told you earlier that you borrow and modify from anybody. And if you take directly, give credit. These two exercises come from Bert Decker. Why do I take them from Bert Decker and give full credit? I don't have any better. Till I find better exercises, I'll use the best, but I'll give full credit. I'd like you to participate in this exercise. First, we're going to relax your voice. It can serve any time you speak. And secondly, always when trying to lower your voice, which I think you ought to be doing, you combine this relaxation before lowering so you don't hurt your voice. So could I have you stand, because I'm going to have you practice this one with me. Two things happen when your voice gets tight. The top part of your body tightens, and of course your throat. So you have to relax your throat first. You all have part of this exercise down automatically. I don't want you to be embarrassed, so I'm going to turn away while you do this. I want you to give me a jaw-cracking, eye-watering yawn. The kind you have in an airplane when you're trying to unplug your ears. I mean, let it rip. The eyes water. Now, if some of you are afraid the camera may be looking and you don't want to be embarrassed, you don't want them to see you, close your eyes and they won't even pick you up on camera. Just let it go. Give me the yawn. Now, if you've done that, your vocal cords, you'll notice, will have opened up. But the part of your body still is tight. Normally, you'd do this at the same time. Take your arms and extend them to the side. Make fists, and now extend it so hard that your arms almost start shaking. Lock them down there. Now take them over your head, maintaining that locked part way over your head. And now what I want you to do is loosey-goosey as you possibly can, your neck, your arms, your elbows, every part of your body. Just start literally letting loose like this all the way down. Don't drop them. Come all the way down. Does your top part of your body feel relaxed? And the voice does too. It is. Your body's now relaxed. Do this if you find yourself tense before making a presentation before you go in. Do not, as you're being introduced and you're on stage, suddenly lose all credibility. Now you're set. I'm going to give you the voice lowering exercise 3 times. It's a complicated one. But I want you to listen to me as I sort of sing my way down to it, then I'll direct you in it. Before I do that, I'd like you all to say, in a group, this is my normal speaking voice. This is my normal speaking voice. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do it again, and I want you to remember the tone you hear. This is my normal speaking voice. This is the voice lowering exercise. Bing bong ding dong King Kong. 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 I'd now like you to all to say together, this is my normal speaking voice. This is my normal speaking voice. Did you hear the difference? Did you hear? Would you drop about 4 notes? Could you sit down and write those exercises down? They actually will lower your voice. Now, I would kid you. I would kid you if I said immediately your voice is lowered for all time. That's not the case. But if you can do that exercise 14 to 20 times and practice it, you can build it into your repertoire. But you have to practice it. Where can you practice it? In your car on the way home. It's not complicated. Work your way down and just say any kind of nonsense syllables that come out in that level and practice it. Now, once you build it into your repertoire, people will notice you have a low voice. Because if this is all you do with your voice, you're now going to speak at a very low voice, and they're going to say, gee, you have a low voice, and you're going to continually respond to them. They're going to say, but it sure is boring because you speak in a monotone. So the second part of what you have to do is build vocal variety into it, and it's really rather easy. A simple exercise you can do while driving in your car on the way home is called the roller coaster. What you do is signs are designed to be read with meaning. You can just carry a conversation on with someone if you tell them what you're doing and say, I'm going to practice my roller coaster. You can have a conversation with your loved one. I could do the roller coaster here. Very simple. You start a sentence low, take it high in the middle, and end low. For the rest of the day, I'm going to do the roller coaster in this seminar until you leave at 4. By 3:30, you're going to hate my guts, and you're all going to walk out of here and leave. So I'm not going to do it. My point very simply is that it's a simple exercise to do. Practice the ups and the downs. You need the vocal variety. It's linked to enthusiasm. It's linked to enthusiasm. So practice that one. Interestingly enough, people will stare at you in the car as you're talking to yourself. But it's okay, there's no problem. Now we have the voice going, we have the roller coaster, we have the pitch. I now want to talk about rate of speed. How fast should you speak? How many of you were taught to speak slowly? Any of you? At least 2 of you? 3 of you? Speak more slowly so you can be understood. I want you to know that that's the best knowledge we had at the time they taught you. But it's no longer good knowledge. It's incomplete and no longer true. A new technology came out about 6-7 years ago called speech compression. What they're able to do is take a tape recording and speed it up without the Mickey Mouse effect. You take your recorder at home now, you speed the recording up, you go up to Mickey Mouse. You can do that. You hear the voice go up. They now can speed it up twice as fast. In some cases, you can buy it at your drugstore, you can buy it at your local electronics store, and you literally can maintain the same voice level. They're called speech compression machines. They're very sophisticated. In fact, in advertising, they started doing research on it, and they discovered that people can understand ads much faster, and about, well, very many percentage of your ads have now been speech compressed on TV. You can't tell the difference, but learning and retention increase. So I think what's important is to start talking about rate of speed. It all started in 1967. They hired in education a trained actor to play Dr. Fox, a lecturer. They got themselves an audience that were an audience like you, except they were master's degree holders, administrators in education, practitioners in the field. They got Dr. Fox, and they gave Dr. Fox every bit of jargon of education. They gave him a prepared script. He got up, and for 20 minutes, he gave a great preparation. The overheads came on. He was terrific. They asked the administrators at the end, what did you think? They said, terrific idea. Going to implement it in my organization. Boy, is that good. That's going to turn us around. Only one problem. It was all double talk. And a lot of it was not just done with body movement, but they'd done very fast rates of speed, because fast rates of speed are also connected to enthusiasm. And so again, it sparked a lot of research in advertising and other disciplines, including communication. In California, Miller and Associate did a test that went something like this. He wanted to test credibility, and he wanted to test rate of speed. Took an ordinary audio recording. The ordinary audio recording was played, and they said, this is vice president of a bank. Played it to a group of people. Then sped it up 25, 50, 75, 100%. Got a similar kinds of group of people, played the same audio recording regular speed, except they said this time, this is a used car salesperson. Regular speed, 25, 50, 75, 100. Interesting results. No matter how introduced, as banker or used car salesperson, as speed went up, credibility went up. Now that's interesting. They wondered why. And here's why they found the reason was. When people can speak a bit more quickly and coherently, people assume, boy, they must really know what they're talking about. Is it true? Not necessarily. Some people just speak more slowly. Some people find it easier to speak fast. The important part is audiences believe. They believe these people are more credible. And think about it. Haven't you always been bothered by really slow speakers? Well, the second thing they checked, I think what's even more important, is what happened to learning and retention. And they found an interesting thing out. As speed went up, learning and retention increased. Learning and retention really went up fast. And that's again why you have all those commercials on TV. They asked people, they said, well, they tried to figure out what was going on. It seems we can think a lot faster than people can speak. And so if you've listened to a slow speaker who is very, very deliberate, and you found yourself in your seat literally trying to jumpstart the speaker, what you were doing is you were bored. And what will happen is you're bored, you're going to doodle, your mind's going to wander. But if the speaker is presenting with a great deal of speed, you're going to be forced to concentrate. So what's the answer? Is it slow or fast? The truth is somewhere in between. There are some conditions under which you want to speak more slowly. Number one, situation of crisis, an oil spill, or you're President of the United States. The economy dips 3 times the level of the Great Depression of 1930, and you want to reassure the public that it is a mere economic adjustment. Speak slowly. They may not believe you anyway, but speak slowly, because it does give confidence. Number two, you're dealing with a product or a service, say a service that is abstract and people really don't understand it. You're selling insurance. You do not close the sale this way. It's only going to cost you $600 a month. It's going to cover your entire family. No, they'll never buy it. You slow down. You're third, giving a technical presentation, and the audience is not familiar with a technical subject, even if they're technically oriented. Slow down. In most other presentational situations, speed it up. Listen, if you can, to any of the motivational speakers, to any of the professional speakers. They have developed a bit of speed. Now, how do you develop speed? Very simply, go home, take your ordinary audio recorder. Listen to yourself. Get a wristwatch, start the second hand on 12. Pick up the word that starts that you're listening to. Watch till the second hand comes around, till the next time it hits the 12. Catch the word it stops on, count the words in between. You have words per minute. At that point, get the recorder out And speed it up as quickly as you can so you don't stumble, because if you stumble, credibility goes down faster than it comes up. And most of you are going to be able to raise your rate of speed anywhere from 20 to 25 words a minute relatively easily. Practice it. You'll know what it is. Again, practice it in the car. What you're going to be able to do is develop a facility with it, and it's going to make a great deal of difference in how you communicate. But again, all those things are going to help you really use your voice better. What other things can you do to really help you use your voice better? I'm going to suggest that you take the exercise we talked about and you practice using your voice. What you might start doing is read aloud if you have young ones. See, what happens is we sometimes forget. This time when you read aloud to any children, read Peter Rabbit or any of these things with all the intensity and meaning. Get into it. Your kids will love you. Your spouse will also get into it. Second, if people come over to your house, read to them. You have relatives who stay too long and you want to get rid of them, start reading to them. You'll drive them right out of there. And so I'm going to suggest there's a number of things you do. In addition to that, things that you can do to practice your voice, play it into a tape recorder. Listen to yourself. You can tell on the vocal variety. You really can. Start listening to it. Things to worry about. Do not, when you go out and get ready to speak, for example, be very careful, treat your voice well, do not drink coffee. If you do, the coffee before you speak is going to perhaps wake you up, but it dries the vocal cords. It's irritating. So be very careful. Always make sure that you have water nearby. And to treat your voice well the night before, tea, lemon juice works very fine. In terms of voices, again, do not eat crackers before you speak. If you ever have these things that get in and tickle your throat, avoid that. Check and make sure you're breathing right if your voice is not strong, and here's how you do it. Notice if you breathe right, my voice comes from right here. You can hear it. If you take a deep breath, just keep your hands around your rib cage or watch your shoulders. If your shoulders go up, you're breathing wrong because you notice what just happened. I'm breathing from my chest. My voice just went up. When you breathe out of your chest, your voice comes up and it comes out high. You breathe down here and your voice comes out. It comes out low because it comes out of the diaphragm. So always check, are you diaphragm breathing or are you chest breathing, because you're going to have a difference in how you breathe. But work on your voice. Work on your voice. Well, we have your voice worked on. Next thing I want to talk about is the greatest living visual aid you have, and I want to start with this one first. Of all the visual aids, it's your body. It's not your face. It's the entire body. And I'm going to suggest that to talk about it and talk about the research, I'm going to have to break the body up a little bit. But let me suggest as an explanation that the whole thing is the body, is that what often happens is we see in books, even on speech, how do you say stop? You take your hand, you raise it with the hands pointing toward the ceiling, and push it out, and that's stop. I've seen books that say if you want to say something encompassing everything, you take the hand and make a sweeping gesture. No gesture should ever be just a hand or a finger. This is simply raising your hand and stop. Think of the meaning of the word. And when you think of a body gesture and you think of a gesture, I want you to think of the whole thing, the greatest living visual aid. You're in your neighborhood. Your young son or daughter is about to step into traffic, and you see a speeder coming down that block. And that speeder's racing down, and your child's about to dart in. You can't stop the child from darting into traffic. How would you say stop? Probably not. You'd probably leap into the street, and what you would do, and I want you to watch what stop is a, and I mean, it starts at that foot, it goes to the hand, to the top of your head, it's everything, the expression in the face. So we talk about gestures. I'm starting with this example before I break it down. I don't even want to think of a simple gesture. It doesn't work that way. It's a body gesture. But to talk about it, we're going to artificially break it up to talk about the research. First of all, what do people notice first when they see you? They've actually done psychological studies. They've taken portraits of people. And they've had people look at them, and they've wired their eyes up to what they in advertising call the eye camera, to watch where your pupils focus. And they found that when people are first seen, the first thing people focus on, despite any folklore from singles bars, turns out to be their face. That's what they look at, and the facial expression. Now that's interesting, because what have we learned to do in our society? We've learned to hide all our emotions. We've learned to control ourselves. A month ago, I was on Southwest Airlines. We had problems, and they switched planes, and I ended up in the front seats. They're 3 wide, and facing me are 3 seats facing also, they're in the front facing toward the rear. I don't like front seats in airplanes because I'm always with young children. I love young children, not on airplanes next to me. And sure enough, they brought this little kid in, and he was something else. He was in the seat, out of the seat, over the handle, between his father's legs. He was between my legs, he was all over the place. I wasn't upset. I marveled at his energy. All over. And at that point, his father grabbed him and slapped him, gave him a real crack. He said, "Why don't you act your age?" Kid was. That's what 2-year-olds do. I mean, he was acting his age. And think about it as you were growing up. What did they do? Well, you're in high school now. You can't do that. What'll people... College graduate. You enter business college, it's, as Tom Peters says, over the doorway of Harvard University is a sort of invisible lintel that says, "All ye who enter here shall never smile again." Serious stuff. Don't let people see what your real thoughts are. Play it safe. And what do we have? A bunch of people who don't know how to use their face. The muscles atrophy, you know. In fact, one of the things I suggest you do is get yourself an audiovisual recorder or talk to someone and say, "I'm going to give you a smile. Is this a smile?" Many of you will find people cannot tell it's a smile. So the first thing I think you've got to do is practice your face, smile, whatever. Now, how do you do that? There's no highfalutin, fancy way to practice this, but I can tell you what worked for me when I decided to be a speaker. You see, in our society, remember what I told you? Mason, cement finisher, Green Beret. Hey, that's macho. That's tough. I get run over by a semi. The paramedics run up to me. They say, "Are you hurt?" And I say, "Nah." You know, I mean, you don't show any expression. How do you learn to do it? Here's how I did it, and I think it's a lot of fun. Nothing fancy about it at all. I like to wear construction hats. And so what I did was I ended up at the second chance enlisting my wife's support. You see, I was married 9 years ago, and before that I used to practice this in front of a mirror, which you can do in your bathroom if you live alone. And it's fine. You can practice voice and everything when you're alone. But when you marry into a wife and 2 teenagers and try it, you have problems. And so I thought I'd adjust to that. I didn't want them to think I was weird. I'd go in the bathroom, I'd close the door, and I'd whisper so no one could hear me. I'd practice my routines like this. And then when I really wanted to get emotional in the practicing, I'd turn the water on, flush the toilet, and then I could talk about half loud like this and really give it my all. And everything went fine till about 3 weeks, and Darlene said, "You know, you said once we could talk about anything." And I said, "Yes." She said, "The kids and I'd like to know, who do you talk to when you're in the bathroom by yourself?" and so what I did was I enlisted her support. Now, you've heard of people who moon. Mooning? This is called facing. It's a lot more fun. And what we did is when we ordinarily drive to the shop or we'd go take a trip, I'd put my construction hat on. I said, "Darlene, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to try and come up with a bunch of faces. Tell me what you think, because I'm going to use them in speaking. I want to make sure they look good." And I also charged her with this one. I said, "I want to come up with the stupidest face you've ever seen." Now, she could have played with that straight line forever. Bless her soul, she let it go. Let me tell you what happened. I did this for 3 days in the car with her, and at that point she said, "It's not fair." And I said, "What's not fair?" "You get to make faces and have fun, and I don't. Can I have a hat and do it too?" And it'll happen with your spouse. So now we had what's called double facing. And it's a joy going down the highway. Because people pass you. And you see someone pulls up, "Margaret, don't look back." Did you see those people? And station wagons pass you with 12-year-olds, and they get into it because they face backwards, and you pull them right in behind them. Greatest faces emerge in the whole world. And it's fun. The day I knew I'd make it as a professional speaker was the day I came up with the stupidest face. Darlene's a hard critic. She said that's the stupidest face she'd ever seen, too. And it's beautiful. I can use it any time. See, I'm assured of a laugh no matter where I perform. Now, this one I can tell you right now, you're going to laugh. It's the dumbest face you've ever seen. This is the face that launched my speaking career. And the thing is, it's not just that face, it's others. And you start getting good. Notice the things I've been doing today, and I'm going to use it the rest of the time. Remember, people notice this. It should be expressive. It shouldn't be Sphinx-like. You should be able to convey emotions, feelings. And it's fun. The real fun comes when you come into small towns and you're doing this, because you stop at a stoplight and cars pull up alongside you. And they try to act as if they don't see you. And you can see them saying, "Don't look." And by the time you turn back, 5 faces are just mashed against the window looking. And Darlene and I had a thing that's really fun. You can play this. It's called the double face. I'd look and see a car over there, and Darlene would be looking at me, and I'd say, "Live one over your shoulder. On the count of 3, double face. 1, 2, 3, and we let them have it together. We did this in a small town in northern Michigan one weekend. We let them have it, and they got us back better than we got them. I said, "Darlene, they're weird people." You know? All we did is we went out of town. We passed them. They passed us. We did this thing 3 different times. We finally pulled them over. They're from Nashville, Tennessee. I live there now, but this is a couple of years ago. When we used to go to Nashville, we'd visit them. When they came to Michigan, they'd stay with us. You can make friends doing this. But I think the important thing is to let the face go to practice it. It's a fun exercise. Your kids will love it. And again, you risk nothing. No one's really going to see or think worse of you. Start working on it. And of course, an AV camera really helps. Well, we know that the face is important. People look at it. We know that once people see your face, the very next thing they look at, very, very much, of course, is your eyes. And in face-to-face communication, one-to-one, across a table, or close-up, there's no way you can fake it. Some books say, don't look people in the eye. Look at the top of their head. Am I looking at the top of your head? And she knows it. Some people say, don't look at the top of their head. Look them in the chest if it bothers you. And, of course, you know I'm looking you in the chest. And you can tell, so you can't fake that. You've got to look them in the eye. But I will say this. There is one thing you can do to fake it. And test this with some people. If you look people right between the eyes and 1/8 of an inch up, they cannot tell. Right between the eyes and 1/8 of an inch up, they cannot tell. Now, you have a problem. You don't have eye contact either. But at least you don't, have feedback from it, but you can fool them. The good part about it is if you're that close, believe me, you're into their eyes soon enough. Now, what do you do when making a presentation that close up? Well, what I'm going to suggest is, should you stare at them? Never stare at anyone longer than 10 seconds unless you're very deeply in love. Then look as long as you want. Because it turns out to be aggression in our society. And think of times you may have had someone angry or been angry or said, I can feel those eyes just boring through me. Or when you've been angry, what do you do? You stare. So again, be careful. What should you do? They say the best time, the optimal time. If I'm making a presentation to this woman, I should be looking at her just over 40% of the time. I'm looking at my material. I'm making a point. I'm looking at her. I'm thinking of something for a moment, about 40% of the time. In her listening, over 70% of the time, just over 70, she should be looking at me. She's sometimes taking notes. She's listening, but about 70. When you reverse roles, the 40-70 shifts. So you don't stare at people. Now, what happens when you put some distance? What do we know about eye contact then? When you put some distance in people, it's a little different ball game, okay? And there are a couple of people I'm really looking at. Question I'm having is, am I looking you in the eye? Am I? Okay. Am I looking you in the eye? Okay. I'm looking you in the eye. I am looking right at your neck. I have looked at your left collar, and I looked at the top of your head, because we have about 15 to 20 feet between us. As long as I have that distance between us, I do not have to hit you right in the eyes. You can't tell when we deal at that distance. As long as I'm getting close, I'm fine. And if I want to extend this farther to 7 or 8 rows, or I want to go to an audience of 300 people, which some of you may speak in front of, it turns out that at that point, I don't even have to get that close. I can look at clusters of people, hold that gaze for 5 seconds, and people will believe I'm looking at them. And so again, it all depends. It all depends on the size and the distance of what you're doing. I should indicate to you, however, that once you start really looking people in the eye, it causes you a problem as a presenter. Because now you're going to notice the person who's going to sleep, or as you're presenting is going, and what's going to happen is going to distract you. So be ready, and I want to tell you 2 ways to do it. If you find someone who's not paying attention, you're talking to 100 people, 99 love you, but one person is looking at you and not liking you, for goodness sakes, don't do what I first did when I started in this business. I'd have 99 like it. I'd try to persuade them. I'd say, now you may not all buy this, so I'd present it again till I lost the 99. If 99 love you, you're good. If one person's paying attention and 99 are bored, that's another case. Then you worry about it. Secondly, keep this in mind. It helps really keep your mind on the situation. People don't show emotions. This person may love you and not be able to express it. They may love you and not be able to express it. Some people don't express it. And remember, in some parts of the country, in some areas, people are conservative. They may be enjoying you internally, but not displaying it externally. I did a seminar in a town in the Midwest and happened to have a professional comedian there. And he told the best story of all. And he was there to get material of all things at my seminar. Why? I'm not a comedian. I don't know. I like to think I have content. But anyway, we talked about people not reacting. And he's like the little kid in first grade. This guy's a very creative guy. He's doing this. You know, I never had anyone at a seminar do this number. He did this, and I called on him. I said, yes. He said, can I tell my story? I said, sure. I won't mention the town, but it's a Midwest town. And he said, you know, I was in this town. He said, I'm a professional comedian. I've been on the Johnny Carson show. I've written for Phyllis Diller and Bob Hope. He said, I pulled out my best routine, nothing happened. I fired every shot, nothing. I got an occasional smile. He says, at the end, he said, because I talked about conservative people, he says, you're right on. At the end, he said, one person came up and said, you know, don't feel troubled we didn't laugh here. We're conservative. You're so funny, we almost laughed. And what I'm saying is there's some people, you can't read it. You cannot read how they're going to react. So don't let it get to you. Do not let it get to you. Well, we've gotten the face pretty well covered. What do you now do with the body? Let's add that to it. And the sad part is we are attracted to the lectern. We often are attracted to the lectern, and I think it's the greatest problem we have as presenters, because it really involves rather bizarre behavior. Your hands seem to be literally drawn to the lectern until they are clamped firmly on it. Now, of course, you can't gesture. And what do? You lean on it and depend on it so the rest of your body doesn't move. And you hide behind it, and you read your speech. If this is all you're going to do, folks, mail it in and send a dummy along. We don't need you. It's called the talking head syndrome. And remember, we're in a very visual society these days. Your children are growing up with 3, 4, 5 channels with MTV-like effects. College students today already have grown up on a steady diet of VH1 and MTV. We are used to movement. It's a different day, and people learn by it. As a matter of fact, they recently did a study in education in which they took a financial professor's lecture, videotaped it. Then they took the content and put MTV-like effects on it, got rid of the professor. They did an evaluation, asked the students, who did you like better? They obviously, well, the professor wasn't even in the same universe. Then they said, and they gave him a test to see how much comprehension took place. And here's the interesting part. The students learned and retained a much higher level of information when it was presented in a visual, interesting manner. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make this point later. We learn 82 to 87% of what we learn through our eyes, and only 7 to 11% through our ears. The ancient poet Homer observed, the mind is more slowly stirred by the ear than by the eye. So again, it's a visual game. And what do we call it these days? We call it the talking head syndrome. And I've seen people clutch this thing so hard. 90-pound people's a heavy lectern. 90-pound people will leave the stage and you can't get their hands off it. They'll literally walk off with this thing and their hands are pried away. And you know what happens when you stay behind this lectern? You can't gesture like this. Have you ever seen a lectern speaker try to gesture? It's fun. I'm a lectern speaker. I'm going to gesture. Here it comes. Are you ready? My first gesture. That was it. That was it. And when the lectern speakers finally gesture, where do they gesture? All the gestures are here. They're all here. Magically, their elbows are sewed to their bodies, and all gestures just occur here. Why would you gesture lower? You can't see it. It's covered. And your bodies atrophy and die from the waist down because you don't have to move it. Have you seen a lectern speaker try to leave a lectern? You see the foot come out first. And eventually, they start to leave it, but they cling to this for security. When they finally break, they don't know what to do with their legs. So you move in transition. Point number 1. Point number 2. And it looks very clumsy. And of course, they don't know what to do. They develop strange tics and habits. Have you seen this one? Don't know what to do with your body and you're away from the lectern, you have eye contact. You wanted to have eye contact. And we learn all sorts of strange things in books too. For eye contact, what do? Look at the back wall. Folks, if I do this for 10 minutes, all your chairs will be turned. You'll be looking, saying, what's he looking at the back wall? Of course, what do you do for eye contact? You've seen this one. They say, look at everyone in the audience. You ever seen the perambulating airport light? And they just, that doesn't cover it. And strange kinds of things with your body because you don't know what to do. Have you ever seen this one? I call this one the metronome. You've seen the hypnotist with a watch that can put 1 or 2 people to sleep? This person can put the whole audience to sleep and nothing flat. I call this the baseball coach. People don't know what to do with their hands, so they discover strange gestures. You know what baseball coaches do? They're always giving signals. And you don't know what's going on. But have you seen the people with strange tics? Nothing's wrong. They don't have an itch, and they're constantly pulling at their ear, or they're constantly adjusting things, or they're picking at a coat. They develop all these strange kinds of behaviors. We have the pacers. We have a number of things. Well, what should we then do with the body? We should consider, first of all, to study every single word we look at and try to think of the meaning of the word and try to convey it. Now, what's the best way we can possibly do this? I'm going to suggest mime. I'm going to suggest charades. And I want to tell you, when you start adding the kinds of body moves we're talking about, it makes a mighty big difference. Let me show you what I mean by mime. I read this piece of work years ago. I want to show you how you can practice body moves with just reading a piece of work. In the 14th century, the Pope decided to banish the Jews from Italy. We don't know the reason. The Jews were very upset. They contacted their oldest, most learned rabbi, and he met with the Pope. And the Pope said, look, there's two conditions that have to be met before I'll reconsider my edict. First, if you will submit to 3 deep philosophical questions and answer them correctly, that will be step 1. And secondly, if you will do that, we'll have this conversation non-verbally. Are you willing to submit to this interrogation? The rabbi indicated he was, and with that began the interrogation. The Pope took one step toward the rabbi and pointed a finger at the rabbi like this. The rabbi looked at the Pope and took 2 fingers and pointed them at the Pope like that. With that, the Pope stood back and in a grand gesture over his head pointed in that manner. The rabbi looked at the Pope and took 1 finger and pounded it into his palm. And with that, the Pope pulled out an orange and the rabbi pulled out unleavened bread. And the Pope said, you are indeed a wise and noble rabbi. You've answered all 3 questions with depth, honesty, integrity, and knowledge. The Jewish nation can stay. And with that, the rabbi and his entourage left. And the archbishops and the cardinals were puzzled because they didn't understand. And the Pope got set to leave. And the chief archbishop couldn't restrain himself. He saw the Pope leaving and he said, hey, Pope, hey, Pope, come on here, Pope. That's how they talked to popes in the 14th century, you see. He said, what just happened? The Pope said, it was clear, my son. Didn't you see what happened? He said, the rabbi and I had a nonverbal discussion. I took 1 step toward the rabbi, and I indicated to him that there is but one God. And the rabbi, in his full knowledge, looked at me, indicated also the Son and the Holy Ghost. A wise answer indeed. And then I stepped back, indicating that God is everywhere. And the rabbi looked at me and took a finger, indicating, and also close by. Another wise answer. And then I pulled out an orange, signifying that God in his wisdom made the earth round so man could live on it. And the rabbi pulled out unleavened bread, signifying it also flat where we stand, so we can have this conversation. The Jewish nation can stay. And of course, the rabbi was a hero among his people. He was absolutely celebrated. And they said, what happened? He said, tough Pope, but I beat the Pope, And they said, what happened? He said, that Pope looked at me, came at me, and pointed and said, I'm going to poke you in the eye. I said, you poke me in the eye, and I'm going to poke you in both eyes. Then he stood back and told me to get out. And I said, I'm staying. And they said, is it all that happened? He said, why, no. He then pulled out an orange, I pulled out bread, and we have lunch. My point is, there's a lot of difference in telling the story, and you can use the nonverbals. What I suggest you do is do charades. Develop the whole use of the body and practice the use of the face and the body. Practice in front of a mirror. And also record yourself. There's a difference. I walk very differently. Most of you have talked to me. I'm very quiet out there and laid back. But on stage, it's different. Can't tell you the hours I've spent in front of a bathroom mirror taking these steps so I look like a speaker walking in front of a crowd. And what you do is you practice it, you rehearse it. Now, I want to add one other thing to this discussion. When we talk about the face and the body and everything else, I could easily talk about the smile and say smile, because it's true. It relaxes you. It can change the climate. We know all those studies. But I think what's important is, in terms of your entire body, is your facial expression controls what your body does. There's an interesting body of research by a fellow named Ekman in San Francisco. And what he has done is he has studied the face and sees how it relates to the body. It's a little bit in reverse. You haven't heard this one before. For those of you who are boxing enthusiasts, there's a term. Go to the body with the punches, and the head will fall. Ekman has something in reverse. Get the face working right, and the body will follow. And what he's done is he's trained people to express 7 emotions. Could be happiness, love, anger. And he's told them to sit and keep their bodies still. And what he's done is wired the bodies up and discovered interesting things. Though the body's not moving, the same muscle groups for happiness move, the same muscle groups for anger move. But the same things happen. And so what happens is your face can trigger what your body does. For those of you who say, doggone it, I freeze up here, get your face working right, your body can follow. When I first worked for Career Track, I'd love to tell you, I absolutely had the highest ratings in the company, and I was an instant discovery. That's not the way it happened at all. In fact, I started with a pretty good starting percentage, not where they wanted it, and 8 times later, it was still down. They're a good company. What they did is they listened to the tapes, they said, we don't know what's going on, and finally, after 8 times, they said, we're going to pull you off the circuit, we think you have potential. It's a real shot to your ego, folks. They said, but we're going to give you 2 months to work on the program. And for 2 months, don't know if you can tell, I'm intense. Man, did I work. I mean, I worked hard. We're talking hard work stuff, hard stuff here. And I put in time, and I did a run through Illinois, and I was ready. And I mean, did you ever try so hard? Man, I tried. I tried so hard. And my ratings went on the first day down to 3.7. They dropped to 3.5, and they were dropping fast on the 3rd day, and I called my wife, and I said, that's it. Final day, it's all gone. I'm going to have fun. And I did the same stuff I did, but I pulled the talking teddy bear out, and I went crazy the next day. And they called back, and they said, we don't know what happened, but we think you figured it out. Do you know what happened? And I did. Here's what happened. My face controlled it. I wanted to have people, you're asking questions fantastically today. You're warm, you're relating to me. This is what you would have gotten in Peoria. I mean, I'm intense. I'm trying hard. I'd come up and I'd say, does anybody have a question? Nobody would talk to me. They wrote things in the evaluation forms, he frightens us. I mean, you know, all I did on the final day was I smiled. I did the same basic words. I mean, but notice the difference in gestures. I came running right up and I said, does anybody have any questions? It's a different kind of gesture. It's not that intense, hard kind of gesture. Folks, get your face working right. Your body can follow. Your body can follow.
This concludes Volume 2, Part 1 of Confident Public Speaking. Roko gave tips on how to use your voice and body to reinforce your message. Included were exercises to help you relax your vocal cords and keys to effective breathing. He also discussed the importance of gestures. Next, in Part 2, Roko explains how to stage your speech.
Showbiz. We're down to the 4th part, and it is showbiz time. And everything I'm going to talk about is going to talk about the staging of it because I think it's critical. You've got to, first of all, maintain poise. And to really have that poise, you've got to do a lot of things and be set with it. So in talking about showbiz, I'm going to talk about visual aids. I'm going to talk about, sort of the pre-stage background, what you do on stage, humor. I'm going to talk about the use of props, a lot of things that really deal with showbiz. Poise. You see, that 93% is so critical that it doesn't matter what you have for content. If you don't maintain poise, you lose it all. There's a number of examples I can give you. I want to give you a couple from Eugene Jennings. Now, you've just seen the presidential campaign. Let's not talk about this presidential campaign. Let's talk about some past campaigns. How many of you have seen the JFK-Nixon